So you guys remember how we talked about the the new show that Tomi Lahren was unveiling, and she unveiled it on Fox News. I guess it's the show called Fox Nation, and it's sort of a whole, summary of things, summation of things. It consists of a bunch of different things. Now, one of those things are her first and final thoughts. Now, she's already been doing the final thoughts for a while now. They're really, really cringy because, A, her thoughts are really dumb, so it's cringy just on the substance of what we're looking at. But B, the delivery of it is really weird because it's like she's basically screaming at the camera. I'm sitting here if I was like, just to start saying stuff like and just screaming. It's like you got to relax. Like you have a microphone, people can hear you, people can hear what you're saying. You don't need to scream. And it's really over the top and forced and just downright cringy. There's no other way to describe this other than downright cringy. Now, George H.W. Bush passed away recently at the age of 94, and I did a video talking about 5 interesting facts about his presidency. I personally think that, right after someone passes away like that, it's not cool to just crap on them. And so that video was kind of that nature of like, oh, here's some interesting facts that make him different from, all the other Republican lunatics that have been in office, and just sort of to show how he's a little bit different than the mold. But the truth is that, his presidency wasn't good. I mean, it wasn't good. Like, it's not preferable to someone who's on the left wing. It's just he's better than other people on the right. He still did messed up things. Now, she's going to give her thoughts on that. I'm guessing you guys are already probably going to be able to guess what she's going to say about this. But there are 2 things to talk about that she's going to say. And again, she's going to sound insanely, insanely pretentious. Check it out.
Well, you'd think the mainstream media would put aside its bias when a president dies, but nope. Hi, I'm Tommy, and it's time for Final Thoughts. America lost its 41st president, and heaven gained a new angel. President George H.W. Bush passed away late Friday night at the age of 94 at his Houston home. And it didn't take long for the loving tributes from family, friends, and pundits to pour in. Heck, even Hillary Clinton had something nice to say. But it also didn't take long for the Associated Press to make complete fools of themselves with a series of tweets that were less loving and more rude, like this one. George H.W. Bush, a patrician New Englander whose presidency soared with the coalition victory over Iraq and Kuwait, but then plummeted in the throes of a weak economy that led voters to turn him out of office after a single term, has died. He was 94. Really, AP? The man, a former president, just passed away, and you use weak and plummeted as a few of your limited Twitter characters? Perhaps instead you could have mentioned he was a World War II hero who presided during the collapse of the Soviet Union in the final months of the Cold War, just maybe? Now, the AP got hammered with comments and later issued this apology via Twitter. We've deleted a tweet and revised the story on the death of President George H.W. Bush because the tweet and the opening of the story referenced his 1992 electoral defeat and omitted his World War II service. Oh, wow! Thanks for the apology, AP, but why tweet it out in the first place? After all, isn't the Associated Press supposed to be one of the most neutral and biased sources of them all? Yeah, I'd expect this from a liberal blogger or pundit, but you guys, come on! Oh, but it isn't just the AP. The press and the media have gone from having a liberal lean to a full-on leftist backbend. According to the Media Research Center, surveys over the past 30 years have consistently found that journalists, especially those at the highest ranks of their profession, are much more liberal than the rest of America. They're more likely to vote liberal, more likely to describe themselves as liberal, and more likely to agree with the liberal position on policy matters than the members of the general public. Yeah, that's a problem. And when it comes to President Trump, the problem is even worse. Researchers at the Media Research Center viewed over 1,000 evening news stories about the Trump White House on ABC, CBS, and NBC from June 1st to September 30th. That's the equivalent of about 32.7 hours of coverage. And what did they find? 92% negative coverage of our president. And we all know it's even worse when it comes to social media. Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey admitted his company is more left-leaning. And when it comes to Facebook and Instagram, don't even get me started. Point is this, the AP's coverage of President George H.W. Bush's death wasn't just an accident and poor taste, a whoopsies. It's just another example, an incredibly petty and crummy example of how the supposed neutral media views not only Trump, who we know they hate, but anyone with a conservative voice, even a former president who died, for crying out loud. Now do you know why many of us don't trust mainstream media and label you fake news? If you can't even report on a president's death with dignity and respect, how are we supposed to trust your coverage of anything else? Get it together. You look like idiots. And rest in peace, President George H.W. Bush. Those are my final thoughts. From LA, God bless.
Yeah, so there are two issues there. So one of them being that George H.W. Bush's presidency wasn't great, really by any measure. You could say the biggest things that happened under his presidency was the formal end of the Cold War, and also depends on how you look at the whole Operation Desert Storm thing, but definitely in context and contextual comparison to what happened what his son did, absolutely it was a success in comparison to that. So we can at least say that. Now, he's not like a great president. He didn't do like great stuff. He wasn't really even that good at all. So it's kind of weird that she's doing that. And it's obvious why she's doing that. She has this weird thing where no matter who the sort of establishment Republican is, she's okay with them, even though they're supposed to be, Trump is anti-establishment. Now, there are other things that I want to talk about. So the first thing is that she goes off on the mainstream media and AP. Now, as the Associated Press sent out that tweet, and is that a tweet that I would have sent out right after he had passed away? No, that's not a tweet that I would have sent out right after he passed away. I think that it was just, a mistake. I think that it was just a okay, don't do that right after he passes away. It's kind of messed up. But, it's not like they were going after him hard, or they were really trying to body the guy, or they were trying to just really go after him. That's not what they were doing. They were just trying to explain sort of a summary of his life. Now, did it come out wrong and articulated poorly? Absolutely, I think that it was articulated poorly. And I think that it just didn't turn out well. But to pretend like there's some bias against George H.W. Bush, especially when the mainstream media spends the entire amount of time praising George H.W. Bush after he passes away. And she brings up what Hillary said as if that's a surprise. This is how delusional these people like Tomi Lahren are. They think that people like Hillary Clinton are far lefties. They think that they're insane, that they're super far left, and they hate any Republicans, when a lot of her platform was based on being barely center left. A lot of basically her entire husband's presidency was based on, trying to hold hands with the Republicans. Same thing with Obama as well. It's hilarious. And she's under this delusion that there's a mainstream media bias. She cherry-picked a tweet from AP to prove a point that is incorrect. The point that she's attempting to prove is that there is some sort of mainstream media bias against people like H.W. Bush, which is hilariously dumb. There is no mainstream bias against H.W. Bush. If anything, actually, I take that back. The bias is in favor of H.W. Bush. So as soon as he passes away, everyone praises him. And I'm not really in the business of praising, but I'm not going to crap on the guy. And I think that's what everyone should do. But no, there's no... How could you think that? The mainstream media just spent so much time, and still now, praising the guy. How could you be under this delusion that there's a mainstream media bias against H.W. Bush. What? What is wrong with you? Are you insane? Anyways, the other thing is she mistakes objectivity for neutrality. Now, no one in the news claims to be neutral, I'll say, other than CNN. And there's a fake neutrality bias. There's a big difference between neutrality and objectivity. So, and this is hilarious because we talked about her citing this. I can't remember if it was her citing this or if it was Fox and Friends and she was on there. It was one of the two. And they go, oh, look at all of these stories that the mainstream has been doing. And, oh, look, 92% of them are negative against Trump. Okay, yeah. You know why? It's because those stories are objectively negative. So when he does tax cuts for the rich, or he does, he attempts to repeal Obamacare, or he's just being a total ass face like every single day, yeah, that's a negative story. And so for it to run as a negative story in the press is correct. And so you're just mistaking a neutrality bias for objectivity. You want, the thing is if it were flipped, she wouldn't care. She would say that they're being objective. But obviously, when those negative stories are run, it's because they're actually negative, and that's the problem. And citing that journalists are more left-wing than the general public, what is that point set to serve? I don't understand it, to be honest with you. It's sort of like when people go like, oh, this percentage of college professors are liberal. Okay, so what's your point? Why aren't conservatives being, becoming professors? Are they just not able to reach the mark? I don't understand. Like, what is the point that you're trying to make? Like, it's almost like you're bashing yourself. It's almost like you're making fun of yourself, and it's pretty hilarious to watch. But come on, like, this is really embarrassing. This fake neutrality bias needs to stop. Can you believe this? She thinks that there's a mainstream bias against George H.W. Bush and establishment Republicans. That is so hilariously dumb because it's the precise exact opposite of what you are attempting to say. And so these final thoughts are really, really dumb thoughts, and they're really, really cringy thoughts on top of that. And I feel like we're going to be looking at these quite a bit more because they're just so hilarious and they're so dumb. And again, the delivery could not be worse because there's a camera right in front of her, but for some odd reason, she finds the necessity to just scream at the top of her lungs and just really get really pissed off at the camera.